Cincinnati. Hear that Bengals growling, mean and angry. Here he comes a prowling, mean and hungry. An offensive brute, run, pass, or boot. And defensively he's rough, tough. Cincinnati Bengals, that's the team we're gonna cheer to victory. Touchdown Bengals, get some points up on that board and win a game for Cincinnati.
Welcome to our first ever podcast. Today we're reviewing the 2015 Cincinnati Bengals. Take it away.
Well, I guess we should start with Andy Dalton. I thought he had a pretty good season this year. He definitely had a step up with a 66% completion. I know he got hurt at the end of the year, but he was on pace for his best season. And I just thought his accuracy was a lot better, and bringing in his guys to block for him, he was reading defenses better. And I think he made a big step forward. What do you think?
Definitely. He had the second highest rating in the league, 106. That's pretty crazy. Anything
Yeah.
over 100 is really good.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I was really proud of him. He really did a big step. We needed to see this, I think, from him.
Yeah. Sucks you still didn't get to see it in a big game, but, you know.
Yeah, for the playoffs and
Not his
stuff.
fault.
But hopefully next year, he still needs to do a little better in the primetime games, I think, especially like the Houston Texans game. I thought he did make a good comeback in the Arizona Cardinals Monday night.
Yeah.
But
Is that something you learn over a course of your career, or is that something you got to be born? That's what I've worried about.
yeah, I'm not sure on that. I think he's getting more confidence in himself, and then I think you'll see that
Yeah.
go to the next season. I think he needs to. I still want to wait and see what he does next year if he keeps this going. I know he's going back out to California with Tom House to keep working on just his mechanics and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it really was bad. It really was a shame when he got hurt because they were having, I think, a special season.
I think they would have beat the Steelers if he was there.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it would have got down to the Hill fumble and then the 30-yard penalties.
Yeah. That sucks. It helps that their line only allowed 20 sacks. That's
Yeah,
good.
20. That's the best. That's the least amount of sacks he's taken in a year. I know he did. This is the first year he didn't play all 16 games, but
Yeah.
25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and over 3,200 yards. I think that's a pretty good step up with 66 completion. I mean, that's the best in his career.
Oh, yeah.
His career average is over 62. So as long as you're in the 60s, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. Definitely think. Because even A.J. McCarron for a little, you could tell he was holding the ball.
Yeah, definitely. Just not enough experience. I mean, he still had 66%, but he didn't have nearly, of course, as many games. And I just think he was just not very accurate. And I don't know if he has the arm strength.
Yeah.
Just seeing him jumping and diving for the ball.
Yeah, when we seen him live, he was overthrowing. Even the ones he was completing, they were.
And that's not good. That puts him in injury risk too, and hard to run after the catch.
Yeah.
So I think he's more of a solid backup to me. I mean, he did have 6 touchdowns and 2 picks and 854 yards. And in the playoff game, he had 212 with a touchdown pass.
Hey, if the Broncos want to give you a first-round pick for him.
Yeah, I'd be down for it. Heck yeah.
Hell yeah. You want to touch on running backs?
Yeah, I was very excited coming in about Jeremy Hill for the second season, and it kind of turned out to be kind of a disappointment for I know probably I'm sure for a lot of Bengal fans, just averaging around 3.5 a carry.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he had just under 800 yards and 11 touchdowns, but the fumbles really got to him, I think, and got to his head. He's still a young running back. I guess keep that in mind.
They also had that weird rotation where they pull him out randomly.
Yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of that. I mean, you can't let them. They won't get anything going when you do that. I think and running backs they need to get a rhythm going for sure, especially someone like Jeremy Hill.
11 touchdowns though. That had to be up there tops of the league though.
Yeah, probably it had to be. He had more touchdowns this year than last year.
About fumbles, they go down.
Yeah, he had 3 fumbles in the regular season, and then 4 in 2014. Of course, then he had the the fumble in the playoff
we won't
game.
talk about that one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But then I guess if you want to go to Giovanni Bernard, I think he really is a legit. He could be a legit number one for you. Just with the combination of receiving and running.
He's explosive.
Yeah, he had just under 5 yards of carry, so I'd say that's pretty good. I know he had less attempts, but that shows us you're pretty good. And he had 49 receptions for 472 for running back, 49 catches.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think
better than some receivers.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So he definitely took a lot of. I guess he took some away from the receivers too, but I mean that's another reason why I think they used him a lot this year is because they were more of a passing team this year, and I think 2014 it was more evident it was more running.
Yeah. How about your boy Rex Burkhead? 4 carries.
Yeah, I know.
One day maybe.
I don't know what happened there. They didn't use even in the slot. I think this 2016 you're going to see more of him.
Yeah.
I think in the slot I think he's going to be definitely going to lean on him because he's very solid to have. I think they got depth at the running back position, especially if Hill can rebound. I think he will rebound next year. If he doesn't, then I think I'd be more concerned. But I think he'll rebound. I don't see why he wouldn't.
The new coordinator is Gunther, right? For defense.
He's defense. It's Ken Zapman. I can't say his name, but
did he say if you like to run or throw?
I think he likes both, but I think he'll definitely get him running. I don't think he's not going to be probably passing and doing all these gadget plays like Hugh. I'm sure they'll do some, but he'll him bringing him in was more to get Dalton familiar, and I think it should be okay. I don't see any problems because Andy's kind of taking over anyways at the play calling. I mean, he can see the field. And like I said earlier, when you're bringing Eifert to the line to pick up a block or maneuver the guys around to help protect him, I know I saw him doing that really well, especially early in the year. It paid off.
It's more of a throwing league anyway. You don't need a badass running back.
Yeah, and then that's kind of why having Bernard in there at catching.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to have Burkhead too because he can catch really well.
Speaking of catching, AJ Green.
Well, what can we say? He's definitely one of the top 5, 6, 7 receivers every year. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that.
He's consistent.
Yeah, he's very consistent every year. I mean, he had 86 catches for about 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's a pretty good year, I think. He's definitely the true number one. And
number 2 is the question now.
Yeah, I know. That's
just lost Jones.
Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu. And that's especially with Marvin Jones. I think that was a bigger loss. I mean, he had 816 yards and 4 touchdowns, but I mean, it's just hard to lose your number 2 who can go deep also with Green.
Yeah.
So it just hurts, and they're going to have to probably draft one, I would think, in the early rounds to replace him.
Yeah, I don't see Brandon Tate being your number 2.
No, I think Brandon Tate was just brought on to be a one-year deal. It's the same thing like I told you last year with Greg Little. I wouldn't be surprised if he got cut after preseason.
Yeah.
But I mean, he does add a little experience. But yeah, I think he's just there for more that he knows the playbook and stuff, and he gets at least some more veteran because they got a bunch of young receivers.
Yeah. Didn't Tate play for the Texans before you guys?
No, I think he's with the Patriots.
Was he?
Yeah, he was with New England for a year or two. And he was okay at first, but he's definitely gone down on the punts and kickoffs, I think, big time. I think.
Yeah, he's pretty shitty. I think it's like a 6 average, 6 yards punt return.
Yeah,
22 per kick return.
Pretty bad. They need, I think that rookie from last year, at Mario Alford, I think he's fast. I think he should take over this year anyway.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's the big thing is get him more involved. And James Wright, hopefully he can come healthy because his rookie year he showed promise. I mean, I always thought he'd be at least a solid number 4, but maybe he can come in and be their 3 guy, their slot guy, and kind of take over a little bit for Sanu. I think if he does that, that would help a lot. They're definitely going to have to find a number 2 receiver because right now I just don't see a number 2 on the roster. No. Whether that means going out and getting Ruben Randall or James Jones and then drafting somebody early rounds, I mean, that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah. You can always line up Jake Fisher out there.
yeah, that's for sure.
What about Tyler Eifert, Phil? I mean, he's kind of your number 2, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, he is really the number 2. It's A.J. Tyler's show. I mean, he had 52 catches, 615 in yards, and 13 touchdowns, and he missed a few games. And for a tight end, especially having that 13 touchdowns, that helps you be one of the most efficient teams in the red zone, having someone like him.
Yeah, he helped my fantasy team quite a bit this
year. Yeah, he helped in one of my leagues. I think he's definitely, they got to lock him up long term too with Green.
Yeah, is his contract next year or the year after?
It's the next year after if they do the tag for the option since he's the first round, but I'm sure they're going to want to lock him up longer than that and just get it over with.
But the 5th-year option for tight end's not really that bad. That's probably less than 10.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, he's worth that anyways. I would for the Bengals, especially now.
He'll probably be the highest paid tight end coming up. I mean, he's not better than Gronk, but he's definitely probably number 2.
Yeah, I'd say at least going after last season, he's number 2. And we go back to 2014, that first game against Baltimore, he was really looking like he was going to be his coming out party, but then he got hurt on that freak play after a big pass. But I'm glad he rebounded good and had a strong season. I expect that to keep going. So, and I think they got good backup, like Tyler Kroft showing potential as a backup. I really like that draft pick now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they got depth at tight end. I don't think they have to worry. Hewitt is a fullback / tight end guy.
Yeah.
I think that's something else that Ryan Hewitt was big for Jeremy Hill in 2014, getting out there and blocking. I don't think they really did that enough this year. And in of offensive line, I think Russell Bodine had a lot of trouble blocking and getting off the line. He was getting pushed back too much. I remember that first Baltimore Ravens game, he was really getting knocked back into Dalton and Hill. So I don't know we might talk about the draft later, but I think the other 4 did a really good job, and even the 2 rookies when they came in, especially their first rounder later in the year when he finally got healthy, I think they showed potential too. And obviously, Andre Smith leaving.
Do you mind that? That hurt?
No, I think, if you're going to draft a tackle in the first 2 rounds in 2014 draft or 15 draft, I think you're going to have to. I mean, that helps them on money.
Do you feel like you lost some depth there? I mean, offensive line depth's pretty important.
I don't think so because, we got the 2 young tackles and we brought Eric Winston back one more year. And we haven't seen enough really of T.J. Johnson, but I wouldn't say he's a starter, but he could be he could maybe come in as a backup center or guard. Yeah. I know Eric Winston can move in at guard also and tackle. So, and of course, Whitworth's done that a few times if they have emergencies. Yeah. A few years ago. So I think they still got the depth. I think they do need to upgrade the center position, though, to make them a little better. Mm-hmm. But I guess it depends on what the rookies do this year. But I think their depth will be all right. I don't think that's a major concern right now anyways.
All right. You want to touch on some defenses?
Yeah, I guess let's start with the linebackers first just because of how the season ended with Burfict. He's such a beast. He's definitely probably their most important defensive player. Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlop are too, and it was big bringing Adam Jones back and George Iloka, but he's always on almost every play. He's always on the ball, and I like him being aggressive, but he got a little bit way too aggressive. Needs to control himself a little more because that really hurt us in the end. And, he was doing stuff like that over the years.
Do you think Coach should have pulled him up during that game? It's hard to pull your
best player, it's hard to pull. He had the interception on that drive before, and then Jeremy Hill fumbled. So, it's just hard to take him out.
I feel like he was just trying to make a play, man. It was bang, bang.
Yeah, I think it was a quick I don't think he was trying to end his career or nothing, but I'm sure. I mean, I guess I am a Bengals fan, so but I mean, he needs to definitely tone it down a little bit for sure, and for his own teammates. And the one thing I didn't like about him is he was just recently, even though he's saying he wants to change, he was kind of blaming Jeremy Hill. It wasn't his fault for the loss, and that's true. But you should never
Yeah, you should
throw your teammate under the bus.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think that's too good. But I mean, he missed the first 6 or 7 games, and he still had 7 tackles, a sack, and 2 picks. So in the playoff game, he was in on 6 tackles, a sack, and a pick. So
He stepped up in a big game.
yeah.
How do you feel about the other linebacker, Vincent Ray?
I think that was huge bringing him back. I think they needed to for depth, especially with the 3 games Burfict, is going to miss at the beginning of the year. I don't think him being out 3 games is really that big of a deal because of last year, as an example, when Burfict was out and Ray stepped in real nicely. I mean, he led the team in tackles with 98, and he had a sack and a pick. And I remember that San Diego Chargers game. He sacked Rivers and hit him on another play and pretty much stopped their last drive from a comeback and helped win the game for him.
Yeah.
And he's great on special teams. So I think he's very important to have there as your third or fourth linebacker. I guess, now there's more linebackers. There's probably more like 2 on the field most of the time.
Yeah, I think it's at like 62% of the time you're in nickel. So
Yeah,
you really
so
only got 2 linebackers.
I mean,
Is he better than Malaluga, you think?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I mean, in coverage, he probably is. Malaluga's not the greatest in that, but Malaluga did have an interception this year and 75 tackles. I think he missed a game here and there, but I mean, it'd be hard to say if he's better than Malaluga. Ray does a really good job coming up against the run.
Yeah.
I think he has a little edge on Ray, but not a whole lot, I guess. I mean, look at the 98 tackles, and he's led them 2 years in a row, Vincent Ray. So, I mean, I guess you might make the case that maybe he's probably definitely more valuable now with Ray Manaluga.
Yeah.
I'm sure after his contract ends, they might let Manaluga, leave. But right now, I think having those 3 linebackers, AJ Hawk was just a really disappointment.
Did he play any special teams? I mean, is he above that? I mean, I know he's your depth guy.
Who you talking about? AJ
Hawk?
Yeah. I'm not sure I don't think he played a lot of special teams.
I think Lemur was the guy.
Yeah, when Lemur was with
Probably
Ray.
Paul Dawson.
Yeah, PJ Dawson. Yeah, he was a little bit. PJ, he only had 12 tackles, but they kind of like they did most of the time. They're rookies. They kind of redshirt them.
Yeah.
Lemur had 40 tackles and he had a sack. AJ Hawk only had 24 tackles and 1 sack. I mean, that's pretty bad because AJ Hawk was rotating a lot on defense, and I think he didn't really pan out. And I think he might be a roster cut. He could be on the bubble by the end of preseason.
Yeah.
Because we'll touch more on the draft later about what they should do at linebacker.
So now that you guys brought back Ioka, and you got Sean Williams, do you think Nelson needs to be back?
I really like Reggie Nelson, but no, I think it depends on what he wants for money. And I know they offered him a 2-year deal. I'm not sure on how much, and he turned that down. So
yeah, and he's had talks with other teams, and they've kind of stopped talking to him. So I'm thinking he wants a lot.
Yeah, I hate to say it because 77 tackles and tied for the league with Marcus Peters with 8 picks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to let somebody like him go, and he's been really great with the Bengals. But I think it might be time to let Sean Williams progress. I mean, they could always add another safety in the draft. And they got Darren Smith, who showed some promise. He hasn't played a lot in their rookie safety.
I think, Nelson like 32, 33? He could start sucking anytime soon. I mean,
that's true. I mean, Sean Williams, he might have started a game or 2, but mostly in reserve. He still had 32 tackles and 2 picks. And I know he had a clutch pick to help beat the Steelers when they beat them earlier in the year. So, I mean, I think, and plus Josh Shaw can play safety or corner. And I was impressed with him, especially later in the year when Denard got hurt and Adam Jones was missed some games. I think he stepped up and did pretty good. He had 23 tackles in limited time, but
Yeah.
I think he did pretty good still.
Before they got him, I'd be impressed.
Yeah, and I was impressed with Darquez Denard too. He didn't play a lot too. He got hurt, but he still had 20 tackles and a pick, and
Yeah.
just really a handful of games of him playing. And he's been good on special teams. But I think this next year he really needs to take a step up to at least be the three guy and replace Leon Hall. I mean, Hall still had 2 picks and 55 tackles. For kind of a slot corner, I guess, if you want to say that. But I think I would let Hall go too, unless he wants a cheap deal. But I doubt it. I think he's going to want some money since he's about probably not a whole lot longer in his career either.
Dre was pretty impressive. I mean, 70 tackles.
Yeah, Kirkpatrick was at 70 tackles is pretty good. I was a little disappointed in the interceptions was down, but I still really like Kirkpatrick. Having 70 tackles for a corner, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
I think hopefully he gets a little better next year and gets some more turnovers, but at least for right now, I would say he's another guy that talked about doing an extension before the season. I think you definitely want to lock him up long term, and keep these young guys together. I think that's the goal.
Yeah. How about the defensive line? Get to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess let's start with Carlos Dunlop, 55 tackles, 13 and a half sacks. I mean, he's definitely. I thought I saw it coming on the 2014 season, and then this 15 season, he really, had a big year. And I think he's very important.
You think Michael Johnson coming in, back in, maybe push him to try hard?
I think it helped both of them too. When Johnson was here, you had Geno, Atkins, and Dunlop, so that kind of, if they're doubling Geno or something like that, that helped Michael Johnson. So when he goes to Tampa Bay,
Yeah.
I mean, I know they got like Gerald McCoy, but outside of that, and I think he was. I mean, of course, Michael Johnson did get kind of injured most of the season. He wasn't healthy.
He had 5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles.
Yeah, for this year, 42 tackles for this year. I think he was in pressures and stuff on quarterbacks. I think he was really great for the Bengals. Great pickup to bring him back. Him and Carlos on each end and having Geno in the middle. I think, with Atkins having 42 tackles and 11 sacks, he's definitely back as a legit defensive tackle.
That's good to see.
And let me just jump on this with Wallace Gilberry. He had a down. I think he had more of a down year with just 23 tackles and 2 sacks. He's really good as a rotational guy because he can play both defensive positions.
Yeah.
And I would like to see them bring him back on 1 to 2 years, just because Mangus Hunt and William Clark has been pretty much a disappointment, especially Hunt.
Yeah.
Clark's still young and with not a lot of chances to do stuff, but I think they're definitely going to need to draft to help that rotation.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And, Domital Pecco definitely had probably his best year of his career with 35 tackles and 5 sacks. And I think this might be his last year with the team. Not really sure, but I think they could always upgrade him in the draft too eventually. And hopefully they take over the following. He stepped up for him, I think, at times last year.
Hell yeah. I think we should dedicate the next 25 minutes to kicker and punter talk. What do you think?
I don't think so. That's not a good idea.
You feel confident with your kicker, though, going in?
Yeah, I mean, well, Keith Huber, I think he's a good punter and gets overlooked sometimes. And then with Mike Nugent, he could be very frustrating to watch because I just still can't get over 2014, the missed field goal in the last play of overtime. I was there in my end.
Yeah.
It was, they could have won the game and they had to tie. So that still sticks with me. It was like 34 yards, but he's got 1 more year. Maybe bring in a young kicker that don't get drafted to compete with him, but maybe just go 1 more year with him and see what happens. I don't think there was really anybody on the market that was young that you could grab.
Yeah.
Right now.
So, I mean, so you have season tickets, so you're at pretty much every game. a big weakness? I mean, do you see somebody getting burnt nonstop on defense? You see somebody not producing or
I
not
think
hitting the ball?
I think the biggest thing on the defense is kind of frustrating. First of all, I think the secondary was great. Like Adam Jones, 62 tackles. He had a sack and 3 picks, and I think he's the leader of that secondary. So having him come back and free, which we'll touch on in a minute, is big. But so the secondary was one of the best in the league. I think where they have the problem, which may sound crazy with how good like 3 of their 4 defensive linemen is, but I think they need to bring another defensive tackle in, especially to help stop the run, because the Steelers with these no-name running backs was just running over the Bengals, and I think they still have, if I'd say a weakness on defense, I guess I'd have to say that they have a hard time still stopping the run. And I would still like them to blitz more, like they used to do with your boy Mike Zimmer.
Yeah.
I think and maybe adding another linebacker would help, but hopefully P.J. Johnson hopefully he steps up and has a good year for him.
Do you want to get into free agency?
Yeah, I guess let's touch on that real quick, since that's just been happening here the last week. I guess the biggest thing, let's start with who re-signed with them. Let's start with that. And I think signing George Iloka was huge, a 5-year deal. I think he's good in the pass coverage for safety, over the top, and I just think it was key to bring him back.
Still young too.
Yeah, and for the price, especially spending this year, I think that was good. And then second, when they brought Adam Jones back, I mean, I think I was fine with a 2 or 3 year deal. I even think, I mean, he was rated the 5th best corner last year with PFF. So,
Yeah.
um,
It was a little high for my liking, but I guess I can see it.
yeah, I mean, it's not all guaranteed. I think out of the 14 million maybe guaranteed. I'm not 100% sure over 3 years, but
Yeah.
I mean, what's he making, 6.5?
Yeah, that's probably.
I mean, that's like I said, especially with Jenkins there for the Giants getting paid all that money.
Yeah.
And saying he doesn't try, he needs to start trying at the end of games. And you got someone like Adam Jones who tries on every play, whether it's defense or on special teams.
Yeah.
So I think that was, and then let's just touch on Vincent Ray real quick. I think that was really huge to bring him. I think he was, I would say if you want to throw in I think the only other 2 real important guys to bring in was the 2 receivers. So I say 3 out of 5 of their best free agents, their top free agents, they brought back.
Yeah.
And then bringing Eric Winston back, I think that for depth purposes, and he's a veteran leader too. So I think they done good. Now, I guess let's touch on the 3 that left real quick so far. And of course, stuff can still happen. They still got guys on the market. Like Leon Hall's been talking to Arizona, and Reggie Nelson's been talking to the Giants and Raiders. So we'll have to see what happens and see if Nelson comes back. At this point, I don't see him coming back to the Bengals. But let's start with Marvin Jones now with Detroit. I guess he had close to an offer from the Bengals, and then he decided to go to Detroit. And I think that is where he wants more receptions.
Yeah, he thinks he'll be number 1 guy.
Yeah, he thinks he'll be the number 1 guy because, I mean, he's got A.J. Green and Tyler Eifert to contend with. He's really not – he's really the 3rd guy in terms of that.
So,
I mean,
so obviously they still had Calvin. They went out and made him the offer. But I wonder if Calvin was there, if he would have went there, be their number 2 there.
I'd be surprised if he did, unless there's something that he didn't like that he's just not saying. But I don't see that. I think he went there to be the number 1 guy.
Yeah.
You never know; they might draft Treadwell, so he still might be the number 2. Golden Tate's there too, still. So
Dude, you're not going to Detroit to win, so there was another reason.
Yeah, there might be. I mean, I think they were close on the deal, but I think he gets more up front.
Gotcha.
Over 3 years or something like that, is what I was hearing from some of the beat writers for Cincinnati. So
yeah.
I think that might be a huge reason. And then I guess the Mohamed Sanu part, he definitely was down the ladder. And then even with Bernard catching out of the backfield, I mean that takes away from Sanu. Sanu only had 33 catches.
Yeah.
And Bernard had 49, so he was really
the 5th option.
Yeah, the 5th option. I mean, I know he did the trick plays and stuff, but
I think he could succeed in Atlanta. He'd be good too, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I always thought of him as definitely a number 3 and maybe a low end number 2. But I think it depends on where he would go, and I think Atlanta would be a really good situation for him to go into. I think he got overpaid big time though, but maybe he could prove me wrong and the doubters on that.
Yeah. So anybody else? Andre Smith's still out there. He's
Yeah,
the Vikings this week.
I guess he's in. Another guy is Lemur, the other linebacker, went to the Vikings, and I think I was fine with letting him go because they got that Marquise Flowers coming back, and he's a young guy. He could maybe take over that spot, and I'm sure they'll draft somebody.
You got Dawson from last year.
Yeah, Dawson from last year. So, and I think he's a good fit with Zimmer. I think he did the best with Zimmer because it's been a few years since he's really been, impactful because he's had, I think, 91 tackles one year. So I think he can come in and do good for you. I think that was 2013. I forget the year, but I think that'll help you out. And then I guess, Leon, we already touched on Leon Hall, Reggie Nelson, but yeah, Andre Smith's out there. I think he'd be a good fit for the Vikings also.
I believe so. Brandon Tate, we already talked about him coming back.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't really.
I didn't really care for that.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. I think he'll end up getting. He might if he makes the team. He's definitely not. I wouldn't think he would. They wouldn't want him to be even the third guy.
Yeah.
But and he's definitely dropped the last few years on special teams, and that might and his contract's not guaranteed. He might be cut like Greg Little was the year before. So I'm not totally worried about him because I think Mario Alford and James Wright and even that Jake Kemerow. Not sure if I said his name right, but I think he last preseason showed promise. So you got some of those guys that could knock him off the team if they bring in a veteran and draft somebody or draft a couple guys. I think that he might. His spot's not guaranteed. They got another receiver, Michael Bennett, but I think he's another one that he's going to have to show a lot to make the team.
Yeah. Speaking of draft, you want to get into that?
Let's get into, I guess, the prediction. This is for right now. We still got some more free agency and some more time to go. But
24.
Yeah, it's pick 24, and with that pick, at this point, you got to really look at receiver. I know it'd be nice, Jaron Reed for defensive tackle or Raggard at linebacker, that Darren Lee would fall. It'd be tempting if one of those guys fell. But at this point, whether it's, I don't know if Treadwell would fall. Probably not. I wouldn't think he would fall.
The number one receiver on the 20.
Yeah, and Detroit may be like, we got to pull the trigger on him.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that are need receivers.
I never really thought he would fall. So I really, besides him, I really like Josh Doxson and Corey Coleman.
Yep.
And I know you like Josh Doxson a lot for Minnesota at 23. I also like that Will Fuller also, but he would be my fourth option out of those four that we mentioned.
Would you take him in the first round?
Will Fuller?
Over some of those defensive linemen?
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I would.
I don't think I could. Unless they traded back later at the end of the first round and got picks, and he was one of the best players available, then maybe. But if one of those three defensive guys fell, or even that Noah Spence fell, it would be kind of hard to pass one of them up, especially, Reed, Raggard, or Lee. I think if one of them fell, you have to pull the trigger because look what Denver did with pass rushers and defense. Defense still wins championships, and you have the second and third round, they could still grab a receiver, I think.
Yeah, you can get a Boyd or a Sterling
Shepard, yeah.
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas could maybe fall in the second round.
I think Fuller at 20. I'd be scared of that.
Yeah, I agree, and I've seen some mocks of 21 or 22 or 23, wherever the Texans have, and I just don't understand that. I don't see him. I see him at as the number 4 receiver in this, and maybe Michael Thomas at 5. And I think he gained a little bit of steam from their pro day Friday,
probably,
but yesterday. But
I've always been a fan of Michael Thomas. I don't know why.
Yeah, I like him. I like Michael Thomas too, and he probably won't fall to the Bengals in the second round, and I don't know if the Bengals can wait till the third round. I think Shepard or Boyd, if they're there, Um, they got to take him. I'm a little scared of that Cooper from South Carolina.
Yeah, Farrell Cooper. I think
Yeah,
his
Farrell
name.
Cooper.
I
Yeah.
don't trust that guy.
There's some guys later in the draft I like that are tall, but you wouldn't want to just draft somebody in the fifth round. I mean, I know, Marvin Jones was a fifth round and Mohamed Sanu was a third round that year.
Not every day you get that
No,
production.
exactly. And I don't know if it's not really that deep. You know what I think the Bengals should have done, and I know you knew, I said this last year, is in those early rounds was so deep, they should have drafted a receiver last year to let them develop.
Yeah.
Like that Green Beckham guy that the Titans took in the second round. I know it might have been a stretch, maybe a little bit of a stretch to take him in the first round when they had his chance, but I mean he was being predicted as a late first round pick. So
Yeah.
I mean, and I think he's going to be solid. And there was other guys, in the later rounds, second, third rounds, like Stephon Diggs. I think they were eyeing him, but the Vikings got him. I mean, pulling the trigger a little early on getting some of these guys, I think, and let them develop would have been better. But hey, I mean, they just got to try to. They definitely, I think, in the first 2 or 3 rounds, they gotta, even if they sign a veteran, I think they gotta definitely get a receiver.
That just goes to show the Bengals they just stick to the best player available, and that's how they built this team. I mean,
Yeah, I mean
take
that's
the best guy.
yeah, I agree. That's the way you got to go, I think. But I think the one exception might be. I mean, they really got to get Andy, another weapon though. I think that might be the only exception this year because in the early rounds, I mean, if Treadwell for some reason fell to them at 24, I mean, wouldn't he be the best player on the board? I mean,
You would think, yeah.
and even I know some people aren't as high on Josh Doxson, maybe some like Corey Coleman more, and I really like him too. But if one of them are there, I mean, I think you got to pull the trigger, especially with this not being a deep class. And I think they need to be more aggressive this year in the draft because they need to. I'm sure we'll talk about that here soon. The playoff loss but just from losing that, they just need to take another aggressive step. And I'm fine with them not spending money on free agency this year, bringing back your own guys and saving money to bring some of these guys for next year to extensions over the summer
Yeah.
to keep the core together. But I think they just need to. I still like, still want to draft best player available, but I think they really need to get that receiver early on because I mean he's the offense. They needs to keep it. You don't want him to slow him down a little bit. Even if you want to do more of the running, I think you got. I mean, of course, if a rookie you bring in may not be right away automatic. But I say you got to try to get a home run and get one of these receivers in to help you.
I agree. Anything else on the draft?
Well, I mean, I guess we'll finish up on the draft. You know, I think they need to get a receiver. I mean, I like that Killebrew from I think Southern Utah. I think it is at safety.
Safety.
Maybe in the third round he might still be there, and he's a guy that you could maybe redshirt a year because Sean Williams is a free agent after this year. For some reason, you can't get him back,
Yeah.
but it's always good to have depth. You know.
Sua Cravens in a second. I'm not
Yeah,
sure what he'll be. But
Yeah, I mean that would be if Sue Cravens is there for linebacker, and he can also be a hybrid safety too,
like what's a Buchanan for the
or Mark Barron for the
Yeah.
Rams even. Um, I think he would be good, and defensive tackle I think they got it too. I think they really need to bring in because Pat Sims and Brandon Thompson are free agents, and we can really talk about them. And Wallace Gilberry, I say, especially with Gilberry, bring him back another year, and him back up and obviously bring back one of those tackles. But I think they need to add another rotational guy at the defensive end because Clark and Hunt just haven't really done it. And then it wouldn't always hurt to maybe pick up another cornerback in the fourth or fifth round, let them develop. I mean, try to hopefully be a 4 or 5 guy on your roster because if Leon Hall goes,
Yeah.
it'd be good to fill the roster out with that. So, and I'm fine, like I said, with taking maybe a couple receivers
Yeah, I would be too.
even in the draft. I mean, even if it was sixth or seventh round, they took a second receiver. I mean, I don't see why it would hurt. In that take, but that's pretty much the draft. I mean, I don't know if Denver would want AJ McCarron, but I would start at number 1. And that would be where I would start.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening. Or 2 or 4th round at the least. But I think, you have him for another 2 or 3 years, so at a decent price. Why not keep him as your backup? I don't see why you would do anything unless you got a first round pick for him now. I think that'd be the only way to pull that trigger. But
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
yeah, exactly. Well, I guess you want to do this coming year prediction.
Yeah, unless you got any last thoughts on 15. I mean, I wouldn't want to talk about the playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's not really a good thing. I think they really did a choke job on that. And what else can you say?
yeah, fuck Joey Porter, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So 2016 predictions.
Well, I think they have a good chance of going 12-4 again, at least 11-5. I don't really see the Ravens. Telling you last year, I didn't see them make last year, so I still don't think. I mean, they may be better, but I think it. And of course, Cleveland, they still got a long road ahead, so I think it's just still battling the Steelers at least this year. I guess you never know about the Ravens. I mean, they're still always going to be there. They got a good coach and stuff. But,
Yeah.
But I say if you want to hold me down right now and say what would their record be, I'm 12-4 again, and then I mean you
Division.
hope, winning the division, and then when it comes to the playoffs, I mean obviously with this much talent, you want them to go win the Super Bowl. But
Anything shorts at this point.
yeah, especially now.
Yeah.
But I mean this, like I said, this last year. I mean, it'd be nice if they get to the Super Bowl, but winning a playoff game for starters would be But now, if they win a 6th straight year, if they get there, I mean, if they stay healthy, I think.
It's all mental, I think, at this point. I think they need to break that, and then I think if they get one playoff win, that could steam.
Yeah, that could give them the confidence. And if you get hot in the playoffs, that's what you need to do, and I think that could surge them. And yeah, I agree with you. I think they got to go. If they don't make it to the Super Bowl, it's a disappointment. And I don't really want. I'm not going to predict Super Bowl right now, but I would. I have a feeling. I think they would win the playoff game this year. But I mean, if Andy's in there and you have a healthy, I mean, with 6 straight. I mean, 5 straight. Has that ever happened? I mean, I guess at this point, I better just wait until after the first playoff game to get really excited.
Yeah.
But that's my prediction. Our prediction. What do you think they're going to do on? Since you're not a Bengals fan, I guess I am a little sentimental.
Say, I don't know. I'm gonna think they take a little step back.
Okay.
I think they still get in the playoffs. I don't know if that's a division. Steelers could be pretty good. They always seem to be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could see them going 11 or something.
Yeah, 11-5-10. I still think they make the playoffs. I actually think they'll get a win this year. I think they would have won this past year if Dalton was there. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then, of course, the Hill fumble, it really stinks. But if Dalton was there, they may never have been in that situation, especially with Big Ben being out that stretch.
Yeah.
And that's one quick thing about that thing that bothered me with his arm and him being banged up. The dinking and dunking from inside the 10 to even get him up the midfield, I thought was a really disappointment. And they had a few nice runs. And here again, that comes to the run defense. And just the not being aggressive enough blitzing him when he's weak at that moment is another thing I think.
I mean, that was a running back we have never heard of. And we watched that game.
There was a couple, I was my emotions was maybe the highest it's ever been in a Bengal game.
Oh yeah, you could kind of feel it when he came back in that game that it was probably going to end bad.
Yeah, and then the whole thing about falling on the ball and keeping extra. I mean, it's still going to give him time, and look what they were doing. So if I remember right, so I think if I would have done the same thing, run, get the first down in the game, period. Because there's so many things, especially with Mike Nugent, you never know what could happen. So
yeah, I'm all about field goals.
Yeah, we won't go there right now. But
so I guess that'll be it for our first ever podcast.
Yep.
Discussing the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure we'll do more for other teams, probably the draft as well.
Yep. Coming up here, hopefully soon.
Yep.
So I guess one thing I want to say is Hoo Day.
Bye.
Bye.